Hey everybody, Izzy Craze 365 here, and welcome back to the Kingdom Hearts story. So, what I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to go through the first game that I just played, Kingdom Hearts 1.5, featured here. And I'm going to do a very quick explanation of the story for all the games featured in Kingdom Hearts 1.5, and that is Kingdom Hearts, the HD Final Mix, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories 1.5 Remix, and, of course, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. So, between these three stories, these all are chronologically the games that happen over the course of Kingdom Hearts 1 and then the events immediately after it leading up to Kingdom Hearts 2. So, a synopsis. Kingdom Hearts 1 features the story of Sora and his adventures. And again, folks, if you're watching this, please feel free to throw up a comment. I will happily answer any questions you guys have about Kingdom Hearts. And again, not going to go into mechanics during this video. This is strictly a story-based review of the games. And as soon as this is over, we're eventually going to lead into Kingdom Hearts 2. And then I'll do a 2.5 remix, which has all these fun games. And then later on, we'll be playing through Kingdom Hearts 3. So, with that said, Kingdom Hearts 1. So, all the Kingdom Hearts games, for the most part, follow the adventures of Sora. And in this game, we see Sora's beginnings, effectively. He is in Destiny Islands with his friends, Riku, Kairi, and a couple of Final Fantasy characters that we're not really going to talk about because Waka, Titus, and Selphie are just not important to the games as a whole. Kairi, Riku, and Sora pretty much just are longing for adventure off of their island. Especially Riku, who is so gung-ho, he finds himself as though the island is trapping him, like he is in a cage surrounded by a sea of water. We later find out that this is kind of just like a little crazy because the island is not that far from the shore, but again, that's shown in a different game. And they just want more adventure in any way possible. And they talk about, how they could go to different worlds, not necessarily knowing that there are different worlds out there. They think of it more as a way of just going to different lands. So the three of them kind of like form a pact. One of the things Riku says to Sora very early on is like, whoever wins the race gets to share a Pao-Poo fruit with Kairi. And it's said that whoever shares a Pao-Poo fruit with someone, their destinies are forever intertwined. It's ironic because Riku is the one who gave the Pao-Poo fruit to Sora, and then Sora inadvertently gave one to Kairi because in a cave drawing, he drew himself, Kairi drew herself, and then he drew himself, handing her the star-shaped fruit, which later on Kairi reciprocated. On Destiny Island, there's a door inside of this cave, the hidden place. Nope. Yeah, stupid JavaScript. We're going to just ignore that. And there's this door there, and they never knew what it was. But in the past, in one of the cutscenes, Riku saw that there was a keyhole in that door, so he had a way to open it and just didn't know how. And then there is a shadowy figure that appears on the island, cloaked with two chains over his chest. This is one of the many Xehanorts that is found throughout the Kingdom Hearts lore. And it's not really gone into much in the first three games that we're reviewing now, but in Kingdom Hearts 2, and especially in Dream Drop Distance, you find out that Xehanort has the ability to instill his spirit into other creatures, effectively making copies of himself. And this is the Xehanort from a distant, distant future who pretty much does not have a body anymore. Just an organization cloak and a spirit wrapped inside of it. And the door opens, and Kairi is standing right there, and what we don't know at the beginning of the game is that Kairi's heart leaves her body, and it bumps into Sora. And her heart is residing in Sora for safekeeping throughout the entirety of the game. And as that door is open, the world is coming apart. We know from a letter from Mickey that he left Donald and Goofy that the stars are blinking out. Worlds are disappearing and being consumed by the darkness. The darkness being the Heartless. And we know from the Ansem reports that as Heartless destroy beings and destroy worlds, since they add darkness to their heart, they release those hearts and make more Heartless. And it's self-perpetuating in that sense. So, Mickey tells Donald and Goofy back in the Disney castle that they need to go and find the key. and he sends them on their way, and Pluto goes with them. Pluto knows pretty much all and sees all in these games. If the Pluto is around, it often is a good sign that you're on the right track. So Donald and Goofy head off, and the first place they go is Traverse Town, and they'll eventually meet Sora there. But first, Sora is confused. Kairi disappeared in front of his eyes. He goes to find Riku, and Riku says something along the lines of, "The doors are finally open, we can finally leave," and then him and Sora just separate. And Sora watches as the island is pretty much, torn apart, and he has to fight a dark side. And after the world fades from existence, Sora finds himself in Traverse Town, because he himself had a strong heart and was able to survive the destruction of his world. Not many beings can say that's the case, especially if they don't have a gummy ship. The Final Fantasy characters that we meet in Traverse Town sought refuge here because their world, Hollow Bastion, was coming apart at the seams. But they escaped in Cid's ship, who he even says it at the end of the game. He had a gummy ship. Sora did it on the force of his own heart. The only other character in Kingdom Hearts 1 that was able to do that is the Beast, and we don't meet him till much, much later. In Traverse Town, Sora and Donald and Goofy, individually and separately, run into the Final Fantasy characters. Sora runs into Squall, aka Leon, and Yuffie, who explain the Heartless to him and the power of the Keyblade, and say that he needs to be strong because the key chose him. Donald and Goofy run into Aerith, who explains pretty much the same thing to them, and they were literally one bedroom apart. They go around town, and eventually they run into each other, and they fight one of the first major Heartless. And after seeing the key, Donald and Goofy are resigned to, keep Sora with them. So they all board the gummy ship and start heading to different worlds, determined to, protect the light. Meanwhile, the Disney cabal of villains, that's what I'm going to reference them as, consisting of Hades, Jafar, Maleficent, Oogie Boogie, and Captain Hook, and Ursula, realize that the Heartless are beings of darkness that have great power, and they are going to be trying to gain control of that power. They don't fully understand it. Maleficent has a better grip on it than most of the others, but they don't fully understand the power that they're tampering with, and they know that if they lose themselves to the darkness, that it will consume them as well. But being villains who are power hungry, they'll gain power any way they can, so they're not really worried about that. And as the game progresses, they decide to keep a closer eye on Sora. It's also found out that Maleficent had about half of the Ansem report. The Ansem report, Ansem was the ruler of Hollow Bastion, which is the world that the Final Fantasy characters were from. And he was conducting experiments on people's hearts. And if you read through the reports, I went through this when I was doing the game, only the first one is written by Ansem the Wise, a character we are introduced to in Kingdom Hearts 2. I say introduced to because the Ansem we fight in this game just took the name Ansem because of its prestige, but is not actually Ansem. And for those of you who are starting to lose track, let me rest assured, this is the easy stuff about Kingdom Hearts. The deeper you get into the lore, the more confusing it gets, and then for every question that's answered, there are going to be 2 more questions that pop up. That's just how Kingdom Hearts works. So, I'm sorry. So from that point forward, so Sora goes to the different worlds. First off, he goes to Wonderland, and in Wonderland, it's pretty much the story of Alice in Wonderland. The Queen puts Alice on trial for attempting to steal her heart. Sora's like, oh no, that's not her, it was the Heartless, and we can prove it. And he goes, finds evidence, brings it back to the Queen. The Queen still says, oh no, it was Alice. There's a fight, and then during that fight, Alice disappears. One of the first people in the game to do so. Well, not one of the first. The first one was Kairi, the second one was Alice. A few others disappear off screen, we'll get to them in a bit. Sora manages to defeat a major Heartless in Wonderland and then seal the keyhole, and realizes he has to do that in every world, and that will protect it from the darkness, to keep the worlds from falling apart. Olympus Coliseum, he meets Hercules and Phil. He goes through some training and is named a junior hero and is allowed to compete in various tournaments at different times. Hades is trying to pull a power play and get rid of Hercules, so he enlists the help of Cloud Strife, again, Final Fantasy character, and Cloud wants something from Hades. The assumption is that he wants to see Aerith again. If you've seen the games or played Final Fantasy VII, you know what that's about, even though she's alive and well back in Traverse Town. He fights Sora. Cloud loses to Sora, and realizes that he doesn't want to work for Hades ultimately. But that doesn't stop Hades from trying to pull a bunch of stuff. Hades is the only villain that makes it all the way to the end of the game without some form of death. Eventually, we go to other worlds, and when one of the final tournaments is opened, we learn a Trinity limit, and we are able to lock a keyhole there. Olympus Coliseum is not so much a world and plot relevant as it is just kind of there and a thing to do. After that, we hit Deep Jungle, and Sora sees Deep Jungle. He's like, this kind of reminds me of my island, and him and Donald are kind of fighting over the controls of the gummy ship, and they crash land. Sora meets Tarzan, and they all reconvene in the camp, and Sora and Donald are a little put off of each other at that point, but as they go through the world and realize that it's important for our hearts to be together, and meanwhile Tarzan is talking in gorilla speak half the time, ooh, ooh, ah, ah. And eventually the friend that they thought he was referencing translated to the heart, that friends will always be in your heart. And after they defeat Clayton, who was not a member of the Disney cabal of villains, very noticeably the only one who was not, they seal the keyhole for that world, and they realize that friends are always in your heart no matter where you go. And that is the theme for Kingdom Hearts, that no matter where you go, your loved ones will always be right here inside of you. Next up, they go to Agrabah. They meet Aladdin. Big things that happen in Agrabah is we actually see the first of the Cabal members, Jafar, and his control over the Heartless. And Jafar has a good number of Heartless that he can freely control. During the encounters there, we see the classic Aladdin stuff. Go into the Cave of Wonders, get the genie. Aladdin had already done that pre-game, but during the time in the world, Jafar successfully manages to capture Jasmine and make her vanish from the world, and we're not sure why. She is the third person, Kairi, Alice, then Jasmine, who have just vanished without a trace. We eventually fight Jafar, and as he's giving into the darkness, he makes his final wish on the lamp, which is to become a genie. And we defeat him, he goes back into the lamp, and story of Aladdin's over. And even though Aladdin's he wants to go and find Jasmine, but he can't, he can't leave the world. One of the rules that Donald and Goofy told Sora was that we're not allowed to meddle in other worlds, which they break at every drop of the hat, but apparently they're not allowed to take people from one world and bring them to another. Traverse Town is technically not a world unto itself. It is the world for people who are in between worlds. So taking Sora or any of the Final Fantasy characters was okay. Anyway, Aladdin requests that Sora brings Genie with him, or that Genie helps Sora in recovering Jasmine. After that, we continue flying in our gummy ship, and we're eaten by the giant whale Monstro in the sky. And this is the first time in the game where Sora and Riku see each other in the belly of Monstro, and Riku is trying to capture Pinocchio for some unknown reason. He is a puppet who has a heart, an artificial being who has a heart. That is the key right there, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. So he captures him, and we think Pinocchio might have died, and Riku's not really on our side, but he's still our friend, and it's very confusing and turmoil for Sora. But Riku eventually leaves using the power of darkness, and we are able to recover Pinocchio and his father, Geppetto, and bring them back to Traverse Town. But the key thing about the Monstro world was Riku was there, and he wasn't really on our side, and we see through a bunch of flashbacks that Maleficent has been, I guess, coercing Riku off screen, she's been saying, you see, he's perfectly happy, with his new friends. And, showing images of, Sora, talking to the Final Fantasy characters, or, Donald and Goofy. Also, I forgot to mention, before we hit Agrabah, we had returned to Traverse Town, which is where we did more talking to the Final Fantasy characters. Sid upgraded our gummy ship so we could go to new worlds, because that's Sid's job. And that would be the time where you also meet Merlin and the Fairy Godmother, and you learn better control of magic. You get summons, and Sid also gives you a book to deliver to Merlin, which is the Winnie the Pooh story. And over the world, or through the different worlds, you pick up torn pages, and you eventually go through the story of Winnie the Pooh. Where, you meet Winnie, or you meet Pooh Bear, then you meet Piglet, then you meet Rabbit, and then Tigger, and so on and so forth. And that book, is a world unto itself, which is important because it's specifying even inanimate objects, like books, they can have hearts, they can have personalities, they can have worlds in them. And that's again, a theme that this game really likes to explore is what determines whether or not you have a heart. Is it? And the answer most of the time is memories. And I'm getting a little sidetracked right now, but we're going to go very quickly back to the worlds, and then we'll come back to that point. After that, we jump over to Atlantica, where we meet Ariel, Sebastian, and Flounder. And one of the funny things about this world is the events of it, like, we're just swimming around trying to find the keyhole. Ursula, steps in, being a member of the Cabal. She wants Trident to gain power, and she eventually gets it. But from the very beginning, King Trident did not trust Sora, Donald, and Goofy. They're like, you came from another ocean, you say? And it's later revealed he knows about the other worlds. He knows about keyholes. He knows they're outsiders. He knows they don't belong in his kingdom and doesn't want them there. He says that the Keyblade, brings turmoil, and darkness and destruction will follow it because the Heartless are drawn to the Keyblade. Trident knows that. The Final Fantasy characters warn Sora about this. Like, the Keyblade is the greatest weapon for getting rid of the Heartless, but it is also the thing that they are going to be seeking out because pure beings of light can wield it. Anyway, eventually, Trident works, after you defeat Ursula, Trident eventually says, alright, I know where the keyhole is, I will, show you the way, and you lock it to protect my world. And he does it, and it's in Ariel's grotto, of all places. And then we leave, and we head over to Halloween Town, and it's the strangest thing. This is the first world where you see a bunch of Heartless, but they're non-hostile. And it's because Dr. Finkelstein and Jack Skellington are doing a lab experiment trying to control the Heartless and trying to actually make an artificial heart. And again, this thing is determined, like, what makes a heart. They had a bunch of, experiments. They tried to power it up and it didn't work. And then it's when all the Heartless turned violent because it wasn't a good heart. We go find Sally. And, the next ingredient was a memory. And what's in memory? She gave us a forget-me-not flower. So memories are tied to the heart, apparently, is what we learned from this. Next up, we're told to go get a surprise from the mayor. We go to the graveyard and we get a surprise, Jack-in-the-Box. So the surprise is the spice of life, and, your memories are the main triggers for your heart. And that's what, allows you to, really connect with other people. Because life, it's not a stagnant thing. You have a past which you will always remember, and you have a future which is full of the unknown, and that's what keeps you going. That's what creates life, kind of thing. And Oogie Boogie eventually finds out that, this heart that they're making, could make him more powerful and better able to control the Heartless. So he steals it, and Sora, Jack, Donald, and Goofy have to go and get it. And of course it backfires. You defeat Oogie Boogie, but apparently, in the act of defeating him, and since he had the heart, which was damaged anyway, the Heartless end up, consuming him, and he ends up growing into the Oogie Boogie Manor, which we have to defeat as well. But we ultimately, seal the keyhole of that world and move on. And the last world we head to is we're captured by Captain Hook's pirate ship and put in the brig. And Captain Hook is like, I've got another one of the Princesses of Heart. And we're like, Princesses of Heart? What's that? And he captured Wendy, and we eventually, find out that she's in the brig and try to rescue her, and Wendy's there, and she's just like, there's another girl here, but, she's non-responsive, like comatose, and that girl is Kairi. Riku is also on Captain Hook's ship, but he's working with Captain Hook, and he'll eventually, fade off, taking a portal to another world as we fight Captain Hook, and we also fight the dark version of Sora, which, as tradition in Peter Pan's world, your shadow is your worst enemy, and Peter Pan's shadow is known for pulling pranks, while Sora's shadow is a pain in the butt to fight. And it's also an allusion to what happens later on to Sora. So they fight. We find out that, Wendy is not a Princess of Heart, but there are apparently 7 of them, and we're not sure why. We also know that Kairi's body, doesn't have a heart at this point. We're like, well, wait, how can that be? Again, going back to earlier in the game, her heart is now residing inside of Sora because of that blast from when the door opened when the world was coming apart. And at this point, Riku has almost put that together, as has, what's left of the Disney Cabal, which at this point only consists of Maleficent, because the end of Neverland is Captain Hook running into the horizon on the ocean being chased by a crocodile, so that doesn't end well for him. We ultimately end up in Hollow Bastion, which is the Final Fantasy world, and it is the world that was ruled by Ansem the Wise. We also find, as soon as Sora lands, he's like, I've been here before, I know this. Even though the world is, there's waterfalls going up instead of coming down. The world is practically shattered. The only thing that's left is a giant castle standing on a shard of land. Really cool looking, by the way. But he's like, I've been here before. I know this. And as he goes through, the castle, he, fights Riku, and he's like, you like them better than you like me. And we run into the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, whose heart was so strong, it followed the one he cared about the most to this world, which was Belle, who we later find out is one of the 7 princesses of heart. Despite his world being destroyed, his heart was strong enough to transport him to what he cared about most. And again, the only other characters that we've seen that for thus far are Sora and Riku, because Riku survived the destruction of Destiny Islands just as well. And we get a couple of flashbacks in Mahalo Bastion. We look around and just like, what's going on here? We're having memories of, Kairi having stories told to her by a grandmother. And as we enter the library, we realize, hey, this is the same area. And it's not completely revealed until, we know by the end of this game, Kingdom Hearts 1, that Kairi is one of the 7 Princesses of Heart. And after we, head up through the castle of Hollow Bastion and fight Maleficent, and, we're about to release the princesses, we find out the princesses, the 7 princesses, are Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, Alice from Alice in Wonderland, kidnapped in this game, Belle, who the Beast chased here, kidnapped not in this game, but from Beauty and the Beast, and Jasmine from Aladdin, also kidnapped in this game. So that's 6 of the 7. The 7th person they have in that room is Kairi, but she's non-responsive. And after you beat Maleficent, you're just like, what's going on here? What are they trying to do? And then after you fight Riku, who's like, I could have beaten Sora that previous time earlier, but he's got Kairi's heart somehow. And my Keyblade has the power to unlock hearts. He gives in to darkness, and that's how Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, kind of wiggles his way into his soul and gives him more power and starts taking over his mind and gaining control over his body. So it's the Ansem, Seeker of Darkness version of Riku that ends up fighting Sora here. Sora wins, but Sora has the knowledge now that Kairi's heart is inside of him, and he needs to, do something to get it out there. That otherwise Kairi will forever be asleep. And he remembers that Riku said, my Keyblade has the ability to, unlock hearts, and he does that. And Sora effectively does, I can't remember what it is, the Japanese suicide, Sebaku, and to himself, and, a bunch of hearts fly out of him. One heart goes to each of the princesses of heart, one heart goes to Kairi, but the note there is more than one heart comes out of Sora. Because Sora's heart is the heart that connects all other hearts effectively in this universe. Every bond he makes, it connects him to other people. At the very beginning of the Hollow Bastion level, Riku claims possession of the Keyblade, and Sora has to use a wooden stick. Because Riku was the chosen by the Keyblade. And because of his connection to Sora, Sora eventually also got that, because the power was gifted to Riku, but then Riku started tampering with the powers of darkness, so it sought out the next closest thing, which was his best friend. And that's how Sora got his Keyblade. And even though he lost it, in the same way he doesn't lose his memories or, his connections with other people, he regained the power to use the Keyblade. So, after Kairi is released, Sora disappears because his body is no more, and his heart has effectively left his body, and that's important because when that happens, that's what creates Heartless. And Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, is about to grab Kairi, and Donald and Goofy are like, we'll protect you, and they're like, oh no, run. And Riku, through just the power of his heart, just stops Ansem from grabbing them, and the 3 of them, make their way back to the bottom of the castle. And then you get to play as Heartless Sora for a bit, which you're just playing as like one of the weakest Heartless in the game, running back through the castle, trying to meet up with your friends because you still have your memories. And Donald and Goofy are like, stupid Heartless, go away. Like, they don't just blast you immediately, they just knock you on the head a few times. And then Kairi realizes it's you, gives you a hug, and Sora's body is restored. And again, it's the connection of people, not only through their memories, but through their hearts, that gives Sora his power. The 3 of them head back to Traverse Town and realize that Heartless are now pouring out of the great keyhole in Hollow Bastion, because once all 7 princesses were awoken, the keyhole was completed, and since Sora never locked it, the Heartless are just pouring out, and that's when the game gets increasingly more difficult, because there are Heartless now in every world, just because they're all connected, because the worlds are no longer separated. And even though Sora has, sealed the keyholes in every other world, there are Heartless now all over the place. They eventually go back, and Sid's like, you can't take that route, it's crawling with Heartless, I'm going to give you a different route to take, let me go get a new gummy Navi. You talk to Kairi, and she explained, how, even though, I was lost for a while, I always knew you'd find me, and our hearts will always be connected. And that is the promise that they made to each other, and that ultimately, that forge of friendship becomes the Oathkeeper Keyblade. Eventually, Donald and Goofy and Sora head back to Hollow Bastion, and they, fight some of the hardest Heartless up until that point, including, the Behemoth. And they ultimately seal that keyhole, and then realize that the power of Ansem is no longer in Hollow Bastion. And the Princesses of Heart are like, oh no, he's still around, he's just not in this world. And they tell Sora, Donald, and Goofy where to go. And they say, we'll track him down. And they head to a world that is called the End of the World. And it is a cinematically beautiful place to look around. It is a world that is fragmented and surrounded in darkness. Like, looking around, there's darkness in the sky, and Heartless literally spawn out of bubbles that come to the ground if they touch you. There are fragments of land, and the farther you go in, you're realizing, like, it literally looks like a fractured world, like something, that's trying to revive itself, but it's dying. And what can survive in this, world of darkness? What, evils can be here? Well, as you go through the worlds, and you realize these are pieces of all the worlds you've been to, and some you haven't been to. There are, remnants of Snow White's world, Sleeping Beauty's world, and Cinderella's world that are, hidden away, tucked in corners in this place. You get to one point, the world terminus, where, it's like little shards of the world, and you jump into beams of light, and it's a representation of all the worlds you've already seen. And these are the portals that the Heartless use to get back to those worlds that you've already sealed. And you go through each of them, you beat the Heartless in the areas, and you come back out, and then there's one more that you haven't beaten yet. You're like, well, this clearly has to lead to the point where the Heartless came out of. You jump in there, and then you fight Chenabog. And in Disney lore, Chenabog is the devil. He is the Fantasia creature that comes out of the volcano. He is evil incarnate, which is saying something. It's not only that he is powerful, but if you watch Fantasia, he is the thing that, he is literally the puppet master, pulling on people's strings, because there's darkness in everyone's heart, and he is the embodiment of that. He doesn't need to, do anything or manipulate you. Eventually, if you start down a dark path, he's already won, and it's just going to, get worse and worse. And you beat Chenabog, but he's not really gone, because the darkness still exists. But the volcano where he was standing on, that's where the darkness was emanating out of, because that's where he came out of. You go into that volcano, and you head down a few more worlds. You eventually come to the basement level, and then you find a doorway. And the doorway is what's effectively going to lead you, well, somewhere. You're hoping to Kingdom Hearts, which, according to the Ansem report, is the world, or the dimension. Dimension is probably a better word for it. Where when a heart is lost, it goes here, and it's shrouded in darkness and just fills up this void, and it is a powerful entity, a powerful plane, and anybody who can gain access to it can gain so much strength from being there. You go through that doorway, and now you actually come face to face with Ansem, not in Riku's body. Riku has at this point been found by King Mickey in a world between, where his body is no longer quite his own, but his spirit and heart were able to fight back, so they were not lost, even though his physical form was. That sounds a little weird, but it becomes clear in a bit. Excuse me. So you fight Ansem, and it's in all of his forms. You fight him when he's a human, with a Dark Guardian behind him. You fight Darkseid again, the same villain you fought back on Destiny Islands. And while you're fighting these two bosses, you're fighting on what appears to be a fragment of Destiny Island, only it's warped and twisted by the darkness. Because again, every world has a heart, just like every being does. And if this is where, hearts reside, leading to Kingdom Hearts, it stands that worlds will also be here. After you beat Ansem the first couple of times, the world starts to fall apart. And you're literally fighting him, in a giant ship, similar to what you would see in the Gummy Worlds, because Heartless can travel through these dark corridors between worlds. Ultimately, you will end up defeating Ansem there, and you see the doorway literally to Kingdom Hearts standing right in front of you. But, between Sora, Donald, and Goofy, you can't close it. And Ansem standing there like, I will open this door. Kingdom of Hearts, lend me your dark power. And then Sora's like, I know now more than ever that Kingdom Hearts is light. And the door's open, and Ansem is, defeated by light because he can't gain any power from it. And they need to try to close these doors. But looking inside, there are literally more Heartless than you can count. Like, if you look closely, you just see, like, millions of little yellow dots. And those are the Heartless eyes. That's not, like, something crazy. Those are literally hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of Heartless. And, Riku then appears on the other side of the door and is like, you need somebody to close it from both sides. So he grabs it and starts pulling it shut as Sora pushes it shut. And then Darkseid start appearing behind him. And then King Mickey appears, and thanks Donald and Goofy, and, Mickey and Riku pull the door shut as Sora and Donald close it. And then Sora seals the outside with the Keyblade of Light, the Kingdom Key that he's had since the beginning of the game. And Mickey, who has been traveling through this dark world, seals it with a Keyblade that is the inverse colors of Sora's colors, which is the D Keyblade, the Keyblade from the Dark Dimension, the exact same one Sora has. So it's two halves to the same whole. The light and the dark used to seal the doorway so Heartless can't get back out into the worlds. With that, Riku and King Mickey end up in, the Heartless world inside of Kingdom Hearts, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy watch as all the fragments of the world start separating. And they even said, even though, the worlds will be separated again, we won't be able to see each other anymore. And, say goodbye to Aladdin, say goodbye to Tarzan, say goodbye to Jack Skellington, say goodbye to Final Fantasy characters. Because once Kingdom Hearts is sealed and the worlds become separate again, you won't be able to visit each other, even with the Gummy Ship. And that's the case. Like, Sora runs forward, sees Kairi, and as he's holding out his hand to her, the ground starts to break up, and, like, Kairi ends up back on Destiny Island, and Sora just ends up somewhere else, and they're like, I'll find you. No matter what, I promise, I'll find you. And it ends with Sora, Donald, and Goofy walking down a long grassy path, and they see Pluto with a message, a letter in his mouth with King Mickey's seal, and they chase Pluto. But ultimately, that is the story of Kingdom Hearts, the final mix. Ultimately, it is a game, again, about Sora, Riku, and Kairi, three friends from an island. Sora goes to different Disney worlds. Oh my gosh, Norton Security, go away. Goes to different worlds trying to discover the power of, the Keyblade and, find his friends again and, get back together with them. And meanwhile, fighting the powers of darkness, and they realize that it's the power of the heart that connects them all. Like, their friendship is a memory that is forever etched inside their heart, and that is a very key component to the game series. Now, with that said, and that was a mouthful, we're going to jump on over to the immediate continuation of the Kingdom Hearts game, which is... Oh, my controller turned off. Chain of Memories. So, as I was just saying, Sora, Donald, and Goofy are chasing Pluto down a path, and they just keep kind of running. I'm sure they eventually catch up to Pluto and get the note, but they just keep following the path because they've got nothing else to do. And they end up at the doorstep of this strange-looking, weird castle. They enter it, and that's when they are immediately greeted by a man in a black hooded cloak. This will forever, from this point forward, be known as an organization code, because it's relevant, and you have no idea who's in there. And, they say, in Castle Oblivion, to lose is to gain, and to gain is to lose. And, Donald and Goofy and Sora are like, oh, yeah, well, we'll show you, and they're, getting ready for a fight, but ultimately, it doesn't work, and they're just like, well, wait a minute, why can't we fight him? And as soon as you stepped foot in Castle Oblivion, you lost all of your abilities. And we're just like, wait a minute, what? And everything about Castle Oblivion is told through the cards. So you're effectively playing a card game, and each card represents a connection you made, an ability you learned. They're all memories, and that's the key thing about Chain of Memories. It is that the cards, which are your life, are all your memories, and playing the card game makes you use it. It's a chain, and it's pretty much your life. The problem is, in a lot of the worlds, as you advance from the first floor all the way up to the 13th floor, you have to use cards, and to use cards you lose them, and hence Sora is losing his memories as he is progressing up further through Castle Oblivion. And it's really kind of crazy. Excuse me. Over the course of Chain of Memories, Sora just loses more and more memories, and as he goes through it, he's like, wait a minute, I'm forgetting stuff, but I'm also learning new stuff. I'm learning about or I'm not learning. I'm remembering this girl named Naminé, and a friend, and he remembers Naminé, and he starts learning about the organization, which is a member of 13 individuals. We'll get a little bit more into them in a little bit, but and like he's running into like different characters as he travels up the staircase. He runs into Riku. It's not really Riku; it's the Riku replica, and we'll get. Chain of Memories is one of those wonky games where like you learn a little bit, and all the handheld games answer questions, but they also open up a bunch of more questions. But effectively, in Chain of Memories, Sora is just reliving everything. All of his memories of Kingdom Hearts 1. He's going to similar worlds. I think Deep Jungle is the only one he doesn't go to. And, as he, gets to each floor, he fights the bosses, he keeps moving on, he keeps learning a little bit more, and he encounters different people. He'll run into the organization members like Marluxia or, Vexen. I can never pronounce her name. Laerzine? I'm going to butcher it no matter what. But as he goes through, he realizes that these people are manipulating stuff, and they're doing something in Castle Oblivion, and whatever it is, it's not a good thing. It's the manipulation of memories somehow. Ultimately, Sora ends up at the top of Castle Oblivion, and that's where he meets Naminé, and Naminé is referred to as a witch who manipulates memories, and she manipulated Sora's memories because Marluxia, one of the organization members, forced her to do so. And the farther up Castle Oblivion Sora went, the more memories he forgot, which meant the more material Naminé had to work with. So, as Sora gets to the top of the castle, he's effectively taken care of 4 members of Castle Oblivion, whose names I don't remember the exact ones he took care of, but and I'm going to butcher those names. I'll go through all the list in a little bit. But Naminé and him look at each other, and she puts him into a pod with Donald and Goofy, saying, she's going to try to piece back his memory, and, wake him up when the time is right, because he's lost everything. And Riku says that, despite, everything that happened in Castle Oblivion, and despite Naminé saying, I'm going to fix your memories, but you're not going to have any knowledge of Castle Oblivion or remember anything about it. He said that he's going to remember Naminé no matter what, because, just meeting her has etched her forever in his heart. Which is a nice sentiment. And again, it goes back to the fact that the heart is what remembers things, even if the mind forgets. That's the very watered-down version of Chain of Memories. Again, it's one of the few games I haven't finished playing yet. Now, there's the flip side of that, the reversed version, or the rebirth version, depending on what you want to think of it, which is Riku's story. Riku and King Mickey end up getting through the Kingdom Hearts, the Dark Dimension, however you want to call it, and they end up in the deepest basement level of Castle Oblivion, and Riku slowly works his way up. And as he, gets up there, he, runs into Vexen and realizes what's going on, that there was a clone of him that was made. They're they're working on Riku's body, and they made a copy of it. And they're doing other experiments, with what I'm going to refer to as puppets for now. They keep trying to fight Riku, either killing him with drowning him in darkness or light, and it just doesn't quite stick. Because Mickey is also there, kind of rooting Riku on from the background. As they keep traveling, they'll eventually meet Diz, who is a very mysterious and enigmatic individual. We will later learn in Kingdom Hearts 2 what his true identity is, which is Ansem the Wise. But he's a man who's very knowledgeable on Heartless and on Nobodies, which is what these members of the organization are. And he, effectively, gives them the organization robes, and he tells them that, you will be, invisible to the organization, and by virtue of that, the Heartless's eyes and noses by wearing these outfits, so they can freely travel to different areas through the corridors of darkness without being impeded. And, whereas Sora's travel to the top of Castle Oblivion was a matter of him relearning things, he lost his memories, and then he was remembering everything that happened, and ultimately ended up in his sleep because he had lost pretty much all of his memories. Riku's journey through the basement of Castle Oblivion is more of an internal struggle where he has to fight his own inner demons as well as the external demons that are the strongest members, or physically strongest members of the organization, and learning to control his the dark side that now resides within him. Also, during that point, the Riku replica, which is the Riku that Sora kept running into in this role, which he thought was Riku but wasn't, thinks like, the only way for me to truly become a person and exist is to kill off Riku. And, therefore I can, become him and gain memories and, be happy and at peace finally. And, well, that won't stand, and Riku and him fight, and Riku ultimately wins. Hello, Raging Dragon. Oh, he's offline, now he's online. But yeah, very watered-down version of Chain of Memories, because this is where things start getting ridiculously complicated, is that Sora, again, to the top of the castle, lost his memories, met Naminé, and took out 4 members of the organization. Riku and King Mickey end up in the bottom level of the basement, travel up as high as they can, take out 2 more members of the organization, and the Riku replica, and Riku starts being able to control the power of darkness within himself. It's also worth noting at this point that, I just lost my train of thought completely. It was something about Riku. Oh, right. It's also worth noting that there's one other organization member that's introduced to us in this game, which is then very important and very prevalent through the rest of the games, which is Axel. And Axel's claim to fame is he's kind of there, he's kind of working with Marluxia and Vexen and the others, and at the same time he's kind of not. In fact, at one point he kills one of the other organization members. So he's kind of seen as like a double agent, sort of has his own agenda, but we're not really sure what the motives are of this organization yet. And that's a bit of a problem. But yeah, this game ends, and the time frame of this game isn't very long. Everything that happens in Kingdom Hearts 1, you can argue that that can happen over the course of, days, weeks, or months. Chain of Memories, very specifically, happens over the course of about, I want to say, a week? I can actually confirm that right now. Give me 1 second, folks. Oh, actually, well, in any case, the reason I can say where it is because of the next game in the series, 358 over 2 days. Why is that relevant? Well, 358 is the number of days between Kingdom Hearts 1 and the end of Kingdom Hearts 1 and the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. This game is literally a filler between those two, except Chain of Memories was Sora's story. 350 over 2 days features this guy up here, Roxas, and behind him we have everybody's favorite double agent Axel, and this new girl who looks like a black-haired version of Kyrie. By the way, I didn't know this before, but Naminé looks like a blonde version of Kyrie who is a redhead. And I can confirm that despite everybody saying, Naminé is a witch who manipulates memories, Naminé is Kyrie's nobody. What is a nobody? We're going to get into that right now. So, nobodies. Nobodies are aptly explained in this game. They are the beings, the husks, the bodies, the shells, the leftovers after a person's heart has been taken by the darkness and become a heartless. In Kingdom Hearts 1, the final boss you fought was Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. His nobody, named Xemnas, who later we find out is not actually his name, it's Xehanort, but Xemnas is the leader of the organization. He is number 1. Number 2 is Zigbar. Number 3 is Zaldin, and so on and so forth. They're each given numbers. And number 13 is this guy right here, Roxas. And if you want to know how the nomenclature works, Ansem, Xemnas, there's an X added to that, and the letters are rearranged. Roxas, if you take out the X and rearrange the letters, spells Sora. And there's actually a really cool cutscene where Xemnas finds Roxas, just in his normal everyday clothes. And you see him put out his hand, and it says Sora, and then the letter starts spinning around Roxas, and then, he pokes, and an X appears in the middle, and then it spells out Roxas, and that's his name. In 350 over 2 days, for the first week or so, Roxas doesn't talk. He's got no memories. He's got, nothing going for him. He's kind of empty, which is weird because every other nobody always has memories. Every other nobody looks exactly like their original person. Xemnas looked exactly like the way Ansem, again, the Xehanort version, looked before he split, because it's the body that's left over, and it has everything. The only thing the nobodies don't have is a heart. And according to Axel, they don't also have emotions as a result of that. So, he can't feel happy, he can't feel sadness. And this game really tests that. So it goes to explain, the story of Roxas. Roxas, learns some skills. He learns, how to be an organization member. And he's told because he has a Keyblade, which is a special weapon compared to all the other organization members, that his job is to go to, different worlds and defeat Heartless and collect hearts for the organization to build up the power of Kingdom Hearts. Which ultimately their goal is to unlock Kingdom Hearts so they can regain their hearts and become whole once again. Which, if you think about it, if you lost your heart and you became this thing, especially if you read the answer reports in the earlier games, if these people were experimented on and the lingering things became heartless and they were beyond repair and these nobodies spawned, they're kind of justified in doing it. And I mentioned the Ansem reports because it says, the assistants helped out. The first 6 members of the organization are all residents of Hollow Bastion. They all worked with Ansem the Wise, and we find that out in one of the future games in Birth by Sleep, where we all see them doing their jobs. Number 7 and number 8 is Syax and Axel. They were 2 kids in Hollow Bastion that just lived in the town. And then the rest of the members... you had a traveling gambler who shows up in town. You had a little girl who was nannied alongside Kyrie, and and you have Demex, which I guess wandering musician. He's not important. But anyway, all the organization members teach Roxas things, and he gains a personality really quickly. But he notices that a lot of these members keep going to this place called Castle Oblivion. There's an entire faction, half the members keep going there. They're working on something big, and he has no idea what it is. And it's Marluxia and that group and Vexen, and they're building something, and it doesn't explain at the time, but they're building replicas. And that's when we're introduced to the 14th member of Organization 13, Xion, who's the black-haired girl there. And Xion to Roxas looks exactly like you see her up in that image. Girl who looks like Kyrie with black hair, because Roxas has some of Sora's memories in his subconscious, and the thing that he thinks of most was Kairi. And that's why she looks like that. Axel sees the same thing, as a person. There are some members, like Zigbar, who look at her and they literally see a mechanical puppet. And that's because Xion is not a real person, and she is a replica. She is a puppet. And her and Roxas are often paired together because Xion has realized that she also has a Keyblade. She also has this power that should have been exclusive to Roxas. And one thing that people realize over the course of the game, or the entire year really, is that as Roxas's power wanes, Xion's power waxes. There's a certain level of power, and they kind of just balance each other out. Like as one grows stronger, the other grows weaker, and it was an interesting thing. But the people who were doing research on that, on what created Xion, were killed off in the first month of Chain of Memories. I think they all went to Castle Oblivion, and there was a 1 week time skip in 315 over 2 days, and they were all dead. And there was only 7 organization members left, 8 if you include Xion. But so these 3 keep going on missions, and Axel keeps doing some missions. Sometimes he'll team up with Roxas, sometimes Xion and Axel will team up. And Axel and Roxas used to have their thing where they'd sit on the top of the clock tower in Twilight Town and share some sea salt ice cream together. And a big thing was remember to check your stick, Roxas, because if it's got a sticker on it, it's saying you're a winner. You get a free ice cream. And Roxas gets it pretty early on, and he wants to give it to Axel because it's a 2-piece ice cream cone. He was going to split it. Then Xion started joining them, so he's like, well, can't do that, but we'll all enjoy ice cream together. And over the course of, after each mission, that was it. They would go and they'd have ice cream on this clock tower, and you'd see them smiling and enjoying themselves. And this game came out after Kingdom Hearts 2, where they established nobodies don't have feelings, and they tried really hard to sell that point at the beginning of this game. But over the course of all those days with them sharing those ice creams, they had happy moments. They enjoyed each other's company. They really, really cared about each other. Which means that despite them not having a heart and being incapable of feeling, a heart was starting to grow within them. Because the vessel desires to have a heart, and it will gain one eventually, because the connections you have are still there, even if you don't have your heart. So basically, no matter what happens, even if you don't have a heart, you still have those memories of somebody. And I loved playing this game for the handheld. Unfortunately, I will never be able to stream it because this is only a cutscene version. But it was such a great game, and I loved every minute of it. But as we're going through it, Jean's realizing that she is not a real person. She is a puppet. And from Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, we were saying that Sora was losing his memories, and Naminé was trying to put them back together. But where did those memories go? She couldn't finish, because most of those memories ended up inside of Xion. That was the basis for what created her. That's why she looks like Kairi, because she has Sora's memories. That's why she has a Keyblade, because she has those memories from Sora, and the memories are what make the heart. So that is what makes Xion Xion. So eventually, Xion runs into, Riku and Mickey, and, they tell her, what's going on, and, they need Sora back. They need her to meet with Naminé. And Xion ultimately makes the decision to leave the organization, and Axel's like, we're not having any of that. And Axel's job is pretty much to keep people in line, Double Agent O. He knocks the crap out of her, tries to drag her back. And Roxas is like, what are you doing? We're all friends. He's like, I'm doing this for her own good. He doesn't want to have to fight her, but yet he does. Later on, Xion kicks the crap out of Axel, and Roxas goes after her. And they're sitting on top of the clock tower, and they're just like, oh man, what's going on? And she's got her hood up, and she never has her hood up. And Roxas is just like, what's going on? And he's like, I have to go soon. And she's like, no, you'll be here. We'll be friends. We'll get some ice cream together. We'll enjoy ourselves. We'll go to the beach. We'll do something. And she's like, it's my time to go, Roxas. And then she pulls back her hood. And it's Sora's face, even though it's Xion's voice. It's like, I look like him now, don't I? That's because it's almost done. And Roxas is like, no, what? And then the two of them have to fight. And Roxas really doesn't want to, but he's like, I'm going to bring you back. You're going to return to us, and we're going to, stay friends. And that's when, Xion's facade changes, and, she is revealed to be the puppet that, everybody has claimed she is, and she has multiple forms. And she's using abilities exclusively used by Sora thus far in the games. She starts off in, a form that's very humanoid-like, and she's using Sonic Blade and Strike Rate. Next form, she's got 4 arms, like a giant marauding puppet, and she's using Arc's Arcanum. Then, she goes back to 2 arms, is mostly in the air, and she's using Ragnarok. And then she becomes a gigantic puppet the size of the town, just like swinging 2 Keyblades at Roxas. And Roxas eventually, beats her. And he's like, no, I didn't want this. Like, I didn't want to, destroy you. I just wanted to knock you out. And Xion's like, no, it's okay. I wanted it this way. And as she fades, she just turns into light and disappears, and she leaves behind her Keyblade. And that's the point in the game where Roxas gets the Oathkeeper and the Oblivion Keyblade. Again, from Kingdom Hearts 1. Oathkeeper is the bond between Sora and Kairi. Oblivion, which is gained at the crest where you fought Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, in Riku's body, is Sora's connection to Riku. So you have the connection to Kairi and the connection to Riku, Sora's 2 closest friends, and now they are both being wielded by Roxas. And by comparison, the oath-keeping friend for Roxas is Xion, because she said he needed to go back, that she needed to become one with Sora, and he's like, no, I won't let you do that. I want to become friends with you, stay friends with you forever. And effectively, they both got what they wanted, because Xion disappears, turns back into memories, and Roxas is going to be able to remain friends with her forever because she's going to become a part of Sora, and Roxas is technically a part of Sora because he is Sora's nobody. Whereas the Oblivion is Axel's version, strong, stalwart, powerful, and the friend who will do whatever it takes and, toe the line between light and darkness to protect your friends, which is pretty much Riku down to a T in Kingdom Hearts 1. He did whatever it took to keep Kairi safe, even though when he thought Sora tossed him aside, he's like, Sora, you're a joke, but he still cared about his friends. The same thing with Axel, and Axel's dearest friend was Saïx. And as this game progresses, we learn Saïx is a total tool. He's an ass. And in Kingdom Hearts 2, we're just it's even, more pronounced, and Axel's, best friend switches from Saïx, his longest friend, to Roxas and Xion. So he'll do whatever it takes to protect those two. And Kingdom Hearts 2 Kingdom Hearts 350 over 2 days ends with, Roxas, saying, I'm done, and he leaves the organization, and Axel can't stop him. He kicks his butt with 2 Keyblades, and he's walking, and he runs into Riku with the bandana, holding back the power of darkness. And it's that cutscene we saw at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, where they're fighting on a skyscraper, and they're beating the crap out of each other. And ultimately, Roxas wins. Riku cannot beat Roxas. He's too strong. He has the power of all of his friends, because he's got those 2 Keyblades. But the trick is, Riku tested Roxas in multiple ways during that fight. One of the things he said was a classic line in Kingdom Hearts 1, come on, Sora, thought you were better than... And Sora's just like, Roxas says, yeah, you wish, or something like that, but it's in Sora's voice, and Roxas doesn't even realize he says it. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. He's like, wait a minute, what did I just say? And Riku's like, so it is true. And another thing Riku does is he's like, do you remember that girl's name? The one with the Keyblade? And he's like, yeah, her name was... And that's the trick, because... And that's the one part of 350 over 2 days that I hated. Because Xion was memories, the fact that she was destroyed means no one else can remember her, and she is literally written off of existence. So with that, it bolsters Riku's resolve. He takes off his bandage and completely gives into the powers of darkness and is able to overpower Roxas. And then him, Diz, and Mickey put Roxas into Twilight Town, a simulation, which we'll see in Kingdom Hearts 2, so they can fix Sora, because now they have Sora's nobody, so they can make him whole, and they have Sora's memories because Xion was destroyed, and Naminé, being a memory shaper that she is, a witch who manipulates memories, she is going to be able to put back Sora's memories. But the cutscene that I found the strongest in this game was at the end, after Xion died, as everything is wrapping up, you see Xion, Axel, and Roxas sitting on the clock tower sharing ice cream, and they're goofing around, they're pushing each other, and it's really cute. And then Axel's talking to them, and Roxas and Xion are both looking, in one direction as Axel looks at them. And then Xion just kind of like starts to pixelate and fade as though she was never there, becoming a ghost and then ultimately disappearing. The memory is just of Axel and Roxas having a good time on the clock tower. And, it takes them to, like, when they were on a mission, the three of them working together, swinging, Roxas's Keyblade, Xion's Keyblade, and, Axel with his chakrams, and, Xion, takes a swing at something, and then they turn, they're facing each other, and all smiling at each other, and Xion just kind of fades away, and every memory they ever had of Xion just turned to nothing. And that's kind of a horrifying and sad thing, because she was just a memory. And Axel and Roxas, because they're nobodies, supposedly don't have hearts. So they couldn't remember her because there was no connection made, even though they cared deeply about her. Now, that's kind of a sour way to end this, but I will tell you that in Dream Drop Distance, we do see images of Xion, we do see images of Naminé, we do see images of Roxas, we do see images of characters that had no business being there. Because Sora's heart is that powerful. He is the heart that, takes people's broken bits and they find a place to heal and grow connected to one another. So even though Xion was, forgotten by everyone because she was not a real individual and was just a memory, she was still etched in upon Sora's hearts because of the bond she created with Axel and Roxas, who themselves are connected to Sora. So if there's one thing Kingdom Hearts will tell us all, everybody, it is that no matter where you are, the bonds you make, the friendships you create, everything leaves an imprint on you. And those imprints are the kinds of friendships that will last a lifetime, even if your mind and memories, fail you. And that is what's going on with Kingdom Hearts 1.5. So, I hope you liked my explanation of Kingdom Hearts 1, the final mix of, well, I don't have a thing for Chain of Memories yet, and Chain of Memories and 350 over 2 days. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw a comment down below the video. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Also, I will be streaming Kingdom Hearts 2 from beginning to end very, very soon. So check out my Twitch live stream, Izzy Craze 365, and yeah, that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, throw a like up, and I'm Izzy Craze 365, and I can't wait to play Kingdom Hearts 3, which will be releasing January 29th, 2019. Anyway, catch you all next time, and see you around. Bye-bye, everyone.